Ark has a ton of fun, unique, and powerful late game content in the form of tech items, so in this video, I decided to rank all of them from worst to best as a player who's unlocked and used all of them over the years. I'll be ranking how useful, versatile, and fun the items are to use, with a priority on the first two. It's also worth noting that this ranking is almost exclusively talking about how good these items are in PvE. Most good tech items in PvE are also really amazing in PvP, but I'll mention something specifically if it's only good in one game mode. There's tons of these tech items in the game, so let's get right into the list. In dead last, I have the Tek ATV because it's just not helpful at all. This item is buggy, really expensive, requires the Alpha Overseer, is loud, is really clunky, is very easy to flip over. There's just not really that much of a practical use case for it, and it would be kind of fun to use if it didn't flip over every 4 seconds. But the fact that it does flip over every 4 seconds is just really annoying, and even though you can cryopod the ATV, which is a nice feature, it's just not good enough for that to ever be worth it anyway. There's a much more fun mobility option in the tech side of the game that's not even the tech suit, which I'll talk about much later in the video, but the Tek ATV really just misses the mark overall. At number 45, I have the Tek Surveillance System, which is basically a stationary camera network, which is a very neat idea for an item, but in PvE, this just doesn't have any use case at all, unless you're in official PvE servers where you don't want to get griefed. But even then, if you design your base in a way that can't be griefed, which is definitely not super difficult to do, you're realistically going to be fine, and the Tek Surveillance System is not going to change any outcomes for you. There's two of these radar detection defense options for tech items, and I think this is the worst of the two by a small margin. The better of the two by, yet again, a very small margin in my opinion, is the Tek Sensor. This is a little bit overcomplicated, it's pretty difficult to use, and yet again, in PvE, it's just really not useful at all. You don't need this. The reason I give it the tiebreaker over the surveillance system is because in PvP, you can use it to see if somebody is meshing your base, which is incredibly useful in certain situations. This warning when somebody is meshing you can actually save your base on certain occasions, and it's definitely better than anything the Tek Surveillance System offers you, at least in my opinion, so I put it one spot higher, but yet again in PvE, both of these are not worth your time. At number 43, I have the Tek Gravity Grenade, which is incredibly bad in PvE. This item has a pretty fun black hole gimmick. You can also use it to knock stuff away from where the gravity grenade gets thrown, which can be good for knocking off threats in certain situations like the tech cave, I guess. But realistically, this is not a practical item to use. It also aggroes nearby creatures, which is another downside for it. And yet again, there's just other options in the game that are better than the Tek Grav Grenade at pretty much anything you could think of using it for. In PvP, these things can be pretty annoying to deal with, and they are definitely useful, but in PvE, they are not worth your time. At number 42, I have what got last place in my overall weapons ranking video, and it's the Tek Railgun. The Tek Railgun has really bad damage per second. The damage per shot is really good on it, but the cooldown between every shot is just ridiculously long. It's expensive to use this weapon, it costs a lot of element for you to use. And there's a ton of other alternatives that are even in lower tiers of weapons that aren't tech that are way more DPS, do more damage, are more efficient resource-wise for the damage you get. It's just really not a great choice in PvE, and in PvP you can shoot people that are meshing with it, which is great, but besides that, it's also really not a great weapon in that mode either, because you'd rather use something like a Fab Sniper or a Comp Bow where you can shoot a lot more often and output similar damage with less cost. Another weapon that's really just not a great choice in this game mode is the Cruise Missile. It has one shot, it's expensive, it requires beating the Master Controller, so it's easily one of the hardest items to unlock in the entire game. And in PvE, you can use a rocket launcher for every single thing you would ever use a Cruise Missile for, and it's easier to use, costs less, is easier to get, and honestly, it's cooler. The Cruise Missile is not bad at scouting out areas, but in PvE, there's really no demand for doing this at all, and there is an item in the game that is literally named Scout for a reason. At number 40, I have the Tek Light, and I did put this a little higher than maybe it deserves to be, but I put it here for emphasis. The reason I put it at 40 instead of at the end of the list is, well, because all the items below this are literally worse than a light lighting up your base very nicely. This is the tier break. Everything above this is at least somewhat useful, and everything below it is basically something I would never craft in PvE. At number 39, I have a pretty similar idea here with the Tek Bridge. I think it's a cool gimmick, but it's only really useful for certain cool base designs if you're trying to be pretty creative. And it could be useful in the early game, but you never have access to it in the early game, so it doesn't really matter that it could help you out then. I think it's a little bit more unique and offers a bit more to the game than a Tek Light because you can just use gamma commands, but yet again, really just a tier breaker. At number 38, I have the Astro Cetus Tek Saddle. This item is pretty cool, but the Astro Cetus in general as a creature is very PvP focused. But there are two things that are pretty nice about the saddle, even though I really do not like the creature. One, you can build a couple of platforms on it, so it does have that utility, which is really nice. And 2, this is pretty unique to this creature, it only has a Tek saddle. There's no other way to ride this creature. So if you want to have access to the Astro Cetus and all of its utility, which yet again is not great in PvE, but it is cool, you do have to make the Tek saddle to ride it. For those reasons, I had this saddle here on the list, even though I don't think the creature is useful at all. At number 37, I have the Tek grenades, which are a lot better than normal grenades, but they're just not great. They stick to creatures and can actually deal damage, which are both nice features and make them way better than the gravity grenades, but they're really niche in PvE because the cost for the damage you're dealing really isn't super effective. The other problem with these is that a lot of the time when you're trying to actually blow something up, for example to get a Phaslosuchus out of the ground, or to get something else unburrowed, you really don't need Tek grenades because normal grenades do the job just fine. So although they are pretty strong in themselves, for the cost they come at and for the utility they serve, I can't really put it much higher. At number 36 is another weapon that's very similar in concept to that, and it's the Tek claws. These need time to ramp up in damage, which is a really cool mechanic, and I do think this is an awesome weapon. But with that being said, it's relatively weak compared to swords or pikes, which are much cheaper and earlier to get in progression, and they're just not reliable in combat because their range also suffers very heavily due to the fact that they are claws. With the way threats are designed in Ark generally speaking, having to build up damage so you're not super strong right off the rip and needing to get ridiculously close to enemies to hit them is not a great combination. At number 35, I have the Tek Megalodon saddle, which is a really cool looking saddle, but it's weak because the Megalodon itself is not a super strong creature to have a Tek saddle with. Obviously having the range utility added to a creature always makes it a lot stronger and is super cool, but compared to the alternative option you have for underwater Tek saddles, which is the Mosa, this is a no-brainer decision. If you're late enough in the game to be using Tek saddles, just use the Mosasaur instead of the Megalodon, it's way better for this purpose. Megalodons are much more effective in packs anyway, and they're a lot less tanky, so even if you're using the Tek saddle, the extra tankiness on the Mosa will give you much better value. At number 34, I have the Tek shield, which is actually a very decent item, but the problem with it is that it really doesn't offer that much extra value on top of the already great riot or metal shield. The Tek shield basically does reflection damage onto targets hitting you, which can be good, especially in PvP. But in PvE, if you're in a situation where you're using the riot shield, for example the Iceworm Queen Cave where the Deathworms keep jumping you, the little bit of recoil damage that you're dealing really isn't going to change your life that much, and having the extra durability from a really good blueprint of riot or metal is generally the better call. It also comes with, yet again, the downside of being way more expensive, so is it really worth making? In my opinion, generally it's not. At number 33, I have the Scout. This is a unique drone which is good for exploring around the map, scouting, and it's useful in Extinction especially. But realistically, if you're not using it to heal your mechs, there's basically no reason to use the other scouting features because you can pretty safely fly around in Ark. Once you get a flyer, a lot of things can never threaten you again. The functionality of healing your mechs is really great and is unique to the Scout, which is why it's on the list so high though, because if it didn't do that, it would be right at the bottom next to the cruise missile. Speaking of the Tek Mosa saddle from earlier in the video, this is where I'm placing it at 32. It's more practical than the Megalodon saddle because the creature is just way stronger, but yet again, it's a Tek saddle on an underwater creature. How good can it really be in PvE? With that being said, shooting lasers off the back of a giant underwater lizard is awesome. At number 31, I have the Tek Grenade Launcher, which was one of the harder things to place on the list. The potential output for power on this thing is ridiculous. It is really strong if used right. But with that being said, it is a pretty risky weapon to use too because it can kill you pretty easily in close quarters. The other downside is, of course, yet again, that the ammo is very costly and that it's pretty niche, but it is really strong, so I placed it a bit higher than the other weapons that are like this. One item that I actually really like is the Tek Shoulder Cannon, which I have up next. This will auto-fire at anything that's attacking you nearby or anything that you have at target nearby. It's customizable and it's pretty decent in PvE for extra DPS. In PvP, it's very good because it can aim lock onto players and does very good damage to armor. But even in PvE, this can be decently useful, especially in boss fights like the Master Controller where there's a lot going on. I don't think it does enough in PvE to be super game-changing, which is why I have it at number 30, but it's absolutely a solid item. Another item that can be really good in certain environments is the Tek Force Field. This is super expensive and is really only good for 1 or 2 use cases in PvE, but when it is useful, it is incredibly good. The best use case by far for it is the Extinction OSDs, and obviously it's more of a PvP oriented item, but it is really solid for the OSDs, so I placed it here. At number 28, I have another one of those tier gaps where we're sort of going from niche items to just generally very solid items. The tier gap item this time is the Tek Hover Sail. If you remember from the intro, I said that one of the criteria was how fun the items are, and that is the only reason this item is here. The Tek Hover Sail is a pretty solid item in itself, but the Tek suit kind of overshadows it, so it's really just not great. But with that being said, it is a really fun gimmick, and that's why I placed it here on the list. If I was being entirely objective, it'd probably be a bit lower. At number 27, I have the Tek Tapejara saddle, which is really a solid saddle. It's practical because the Tapejara is already a pretty good flyer. It's also very maneuverable, so you can actually aim better with the Tek saddle because you can go left and right, up and down if you want to adjust your aiming. It's really just a creature that's designed to benefit from having a Tek saddle because it's really great at hovering around threats. It's definitely a solid Tek saddle, but there are creatures that are just way better in the game that get Tek saddles, so I put it here. At number 26, I have the Tek Rex saddle, just a bit above the Tapejara saddle. The reason for that is, although it doesn't benefit as much from having a Tek saddle as the Tapejara, the Rex is just a far better creature in general, so I did put it one spot higher. At number 25, I have the Tek Turret. In PvP, this would be in the top 3 probably, but in this game mode, it doesn't give you as much value. There's really not that many threats in the PvE side of the game that require Tek turrets to deal with. Even heavy turrets are kind of overkill for most things, and auto turrets are useful but not great. The reality is, the knockback these provide and the extra strength they have over the other turrets really just doesn't give you anything that you miss with the other turrets in the game, especially with them adding a wider variety of turrets in ASA like the Hive Wasp turret, the Tesla coil. There's just never super good opportunities to use Tek turrets, so although it is a very strong item, it's just not very practical. I'm also placing the Tek structures right here next to the Tek turret at number 24. These are stronger than metal, of course, and they're mainly good for PvP in certain situations. In the PvE side of the game, they're just really expensive, and even though they do look very cool, they are really just a late game item if you have nothing else to grind for. They're very strong. If you have a Tek base basically anywhere in the entire map in PvE, you're pretty much never ever gonna have to worry about anything. But it's just so expensive and impractical that I placed it here. I'm placing the new Tek Bunker from the Lost Colony ASA DLC at number 23 on my list. This is just a bit better than regular Tek structures in my opinion. This does offer you something that nothing else in the game does. It basically lets you drill down and build a pretty cool concept for an underground base. And although this concept is really awesome and it is very powerful in certain situations in the game, in PvE it's very expensive, very buggy of course, and is kind of just unnecessary. I think expanding into a new way of building bases, for example doing this or going underwater, is a cool concept, but it doesn't really change the game that much and doesn't really offer you much that you don't already have access to. So I placed it one spot above the structures because it's more unique. At number 22, I have the Tek Moon Pool, which is probably also not surprising to you. This basically allows you to make underwater bases that are actually fully down there while having air pockets for yourself to breathe in the base. It's really awesome. It's less buggy than the bunker, so I put it one spot above it. And this is actually something that I like to mess around with in late game PvE when I just have really nothing else to work on. But yet again, it's really not that practical. You could build a base on the beach and just go underwater whenever you want to by having creatures right next to your base there ready to go deep down underwater. So I can't really put it much higher than this. At number 21, I have the Tek Rock Drake saddle, which has gone up a lot in Ark Survival Ascended. This saddle has always been pretty good because the Rock Drake is a pretty maneuverable creature just like the Tapejara. But in Ark Survival Ascended, after they removed your ability to use weapons on the back of the Rock Drake, getting the projectile from the Tek saddle makes it so much better. Honestly, after that nerf they gave, which was really heavy, not being able to use weapons on the back of the Rock Drake, this Tek saddle keeps the Rock Drake as a very strong creature in the game, and without it, it's just pretty good. In ASC, I would probably put this a bit lower on the list, right around where the Tapejara is, because yet again, you really don't need it as much in that game, but it's still a great item. At number 20, I have another Tek saddle, and this time it's the Astrodelphus Tek saddle. This is needed for riding the Astrodelphus, so it's pretty similar to the Astrocetus in that way, but this creature is much better than the Astrocetus. This creature is super fast, works underwater, has lasers, is really maneuverable, and is just awesome. I would argue this is much more oriented towards the PvP side of the game in terms of utility it provides, but the creature is strong and the Tek saddle makes you be able to use it, so it's a great item. At number 19, I have the mech. This is another tier gap for me because I think every item, including the mech and above it, is an incredibly good tech item. The mech is more focused towards the PvP side, but there is really good utility in PvE. It's able to kill the Desert Titan outright by just sitting below it and shooting up to it. It's great against the other Titans as well because you can either use it to stay back as a really strong option to shoot it with range and avoid the Titans, or you can just use it to shoot the corrupted nodules on the Titans so you can actually tame them. And against the Forest Titan especially, you can use it so you don't get dismounted because that thing can do that, because when you're inside the mech, you are immune to getting grabbed off the thing and then getting attacked. So the safety it gives you, the attachments you can use, which are all pretty okay in their own right, especially the cannon, which is really good for knocking out very strong creatures like the Titanosaur. And because of the blueprints you can get, which make it even stronger, the mech is just very solid, yet again more PvP focused, which is why it's a bit lower on the list, but definitely good. The Mega Mech is also incredibly good for the Alpha King Titan fight, which boosts it even more. At number 18, I have the Tek sword, and I am going to include Mjolnir as the skin option for it in this ranking at this slot as well. This is by far the best Tek melee weapon option. It's much better than the Tek claws because it has normal good sword range for attacking, and it actually offers you mobility as well, which is very nice. It also does damage way more quickly because there's no buildup requirement, and when you have the Mjolnir attachment, there's extra projectile stuff. It looks awesome, and the weapon just gets even stronger than it already is. Of course, it is a melee weapon, so there are restrictions to how good it really can be. Using a melee weapon generally isn't the most optimal way of dealing with most threats in the game, and to use the special attacks from the Tek sword, you also need to use element, so the benefits you get on top of normal melee weapons do cost a lot, which sort of mitigates the point of using melee weapons in the first place because they're kind of used to be a cheap option to solve problems, but it is the cream of the crop of melee weapons in the game, so I place it here. I have the Exomech at number 17, and this is another really good item. It can act as a Tek replicator, it moves structures around, it has very good mobility, it's great in the Rockwell Prime boss fight, and honestly, there's really nothing wrong with this item at all. It's pretty PvE friendly for sure. And if you want to argue this should be above the Tek rep, then that's totally fair. The Tek rep is the hardest thing to rank on the entire list because it makes everything else. But I'm going to make the argument that because the Exomech isn't in both games and is a DLC item, that the Tek replicator is the main crafting station for Tek quality items, and I'm going to rank the Exomech based on the other utility more. The Exomech is fantastic though. At number 16, I have the Tek binoculars, which is an ASA exclusive item, but it is incredibly good. It's basically an upgraded spyglass that has a distance meter, it displays color and mutation stats, gives you night vision, and it's just an incredibly useful item. Being able to see the stats before you tame a creature especially is super good because you can basically see if a level 150 that you're looking at actually has good enough stats to be worthwhile. The overseer requirement is a bit steep, but it is worth it for this item. At number 15, I have the Tek crop plot. This is a ridiculously good upgrade to regular crop plots in the game, and they're incredibly good for endgame farming. Tek crop plots have a couple of benefits. First of all, they grow crops 1.5x the speed of regular crop plots. They also apply a max greenhouse effect on themselves of 500%, which is incredibly useful, and you don't even need them to be under sunlight for them to work, because they light themselves. This means you can put them anywhere and they will be efficient for growing crops, caves, tops of mountains, wherever you put them, they're gonna be great. At number 14, I have kind of a change of pace, and it's the Tek transmitter. This is basically a mobile obelisk. It allows you to transfer easily, it allows you to put stuff into your upload so that it just stays there and isn't on the actual map. It's really just hugely convenient for farming in certain areas. If you go to a different map to farm and then use a transmitter, you can easily transport all your stuff back to your main base really easily, even if you're nowhere near an obelisk or a drop. Having this functionality is just incredibly useful, especially in the early game on PvE servers, where this basically means you will never get griefed because you can just put all your stuff in upload. Even though this conflicts a little bit with my overall weapons ranking video, I think that the Tek Rifle is the third best Tek weapon for PvE purposes. It's one of the best weapons in the game, has incredibly good DPS, rapid fire, is usable underwater, on land, wherever you want to use it, and it does really solid knockback, which is great. But the issue is there's just not that much versatility with the Tek Rifle besides killing stuff, and it's pretty expensive to use compared to other options. It's definitely a solid weapon to have on you in the late game because it's a pretty good insurance of you're never going to get killed by something because you have a Tek Rifle on you, but it doesn't do enough to be higher than 13 for me. The Tek Phase Pistol, on the other hand, does do enough to be higher than 13. I have it one spot above the Tek Rifle because it's much more versatile. Even though the damage does take a while to charge up, which means the Tek Rifle is way better at that specific use case, the Tek Phase Pistol is also excellent because it can stun enemies and it can heal your tames. All three of these have more of a charge up style. You need to be attacking the thing for a while for it to get stunned, you need to hit something for a while for it to do a bunch of damage, and the healing does build up over time too, but it's a great weapon for the versatility, definitely the second best Tek weapon in the game for PvE. If you add into consideration that the Tek Rifle has better range and it can deal damage to structures, which is a great tool, it's obviously better in PvP, but this ranking yet again is mainly for PvE. At number 11, I have the Tek Canteen, which is ridiculously good because it can store 9 drinks versus the 3 of the regular canteen, and you can have insulation bonuses on the water you store, where it can either heat you up or it can cool you down. Mainly it's useful for cooling you down now. Just a really handy tool for pretty much any survivor on any map. It's obviously much better on certain maps where it's always hot like Scorched Earth or where it's always really cold, but the fact that you should always have it on your kit pretty much anytime you play the game means it's in my top 11 and is the start of my top tier of Tek items that basically get used by me every single playthrough. At number 10, I have the Tek Sleeping Pod. This is a really awesome respawn option. It grants you passive XP while you're inside of it. It restores your status conditions, which is very convenient. And if you're one of those players who AFKs a lot when you're playing the game, having a Tek Sleeping Pod in your base makes it so much easier to do that. You don't have to constantly go back and check if your character's dying from some ailment. You can just go in the sleeping pod, leave, and then come back whenever you're ready to keep playing. At number 9, I have the Tek Cloning Chamber. The Cloning Chamber is ridiculously good because it does so many things that nothing else in the game can do. First of all, cloning non-breedable creatures is just a cool option to have in the game. But more importantly, when you have a gacha that's giving you a really good resource, you can clone it to get more of that type of gacha. For example, if you have an element dust gacha, you can't just breed down an element dust gacha to get more element dust gachas. That's not how it works. The only way to replicate that is by cloning. It's also really useful if you get a very low stat female breeder for your breed lines to clone that a couple of times because it's very cheap to clone really low level creatures, as having multiple females that have low stats will make the breed line go so much faster. At number 8, I have the dedicated storage, which is ridiculously convenient as well. This is a storage that can hold one specific type of resource, and it holds a massive amount of that resource. This is basically a must-have in the late game if you're in a tribe with more than just you, because over time as you play the game more and more, you're going to stockpile so many resources, and it's so much more space efficient to put them in dedicated storages than anywhere else. There's also the most obvious use case for the dedicated storage, which is linking it to your Tek Strider, so as you farm with the Strider, it automatically gets sent back to your base, and you can keep farming without stocking up weight. For these reasons, it's a must-have for the farming side of the game, and farming in Ark is pretty important. At number 7, I have the Tek Trough. The Tek Trough automatically refrigerates food that's inside the trough. It prevents dino starvation extremely well because of this. Basically, stuff takes way longer to spoil in there than a regular trough. And the quality of life this provides by being able to put all your stuff in Tek Troughs instead of regular troughs is just good enough to be this high on the list. It's still not able to feed baby creatures, which would have been a really nice feature for the Tek Trough, but it also comes with almost double the amount of stacks that a regular trough has, so it's just so much better, and a night and day upgrade on your base once you get it. The Tek Teleporter is a lot better than the Tek Transmitter in PVE. It gives you instant fast travel around the map to certain hot points wherever you place them. They're easy to build a base around to make actually safe teleporters for you to travel with, and it saves you a huge amount of time in the late game for grindy traveling around the map, when all you're really doing is side quests to have more fun in the game. So it's a great time to have something like a Tek Teleporter. Unlocking this makes the game so much more fun, and it makes the game so much less tedious if you're trying to just do fun projects. At number 5, this is where I'm going to place the Tek Replicator. It's an essential crafting item for 97% of Tek items in the game, and it's a complete replacement for the Smithy and the Fabricator, which is also really nice. It just consolidates down your crafting stations, makes your base look cleaner, makes it so you only have to go to one spot for all your crafting needs, and is the perfect thing to have for a big crafting session because of the large slot cap. You could argue that it's the best item in the game for Tek because it crafts almost everything, but you could also argue, who needs the Tek Replicator? You can use the Exomech, so I'm just going to put it at 5. At number 4 is the Tek Generator for very similar reasons to the Tek Replicator. You use it to charge all the Tek level stuff in the game, which is obviously really important. The Tek Generator is also very durable, so maps that have weather conditions that damage generators aren't really going to screw you on Tek Generators because of the HP. So it's just a fantastic item. It also has a bigger range than normal generators, so I placed it at 4. At number 3, I have by far the best Tek weapon in the game, and easily the best weapon in the game in general, the Tek Bow. The Tek Bow basically has unlimited range, immediate hit reg, 4 different ammo types that make it one of the most versatile weapons in the entire game. It has explosive, fire, tranq, and normal metal arrows, and you can even use it underwater, so it can be used in every environment. I talk about all these Tek weapons in much more detail in my actual weapons ranking video, but this is easily the best weapon in the game. At number 2, I have the Tek Suit. The Tek Suit is incredibly good for maneuverability. It's better in PvP for sure because it basically makes you fight in PvP viably. When you don't have it, it's really hard to fight a lot of people in open world. But it is solid in PvE as well for just traveling around and doing tasks very conveniently. Honestly, the best way I can describe Tek Suits in Ark is that it basically makes you immortal in the PvE side of the game because it's so good. And at number 1, by a pretty wide margin, I have the Hover Skiff. It's the fastest traveling option in the game, can carry dinos and resources, has buildable platforms on it, has projectile attacks you can use so it's really OP for just killing stuff too, and most importantly, you can carry a Strider on it. The Skiff plus Strider combo has been the best farming method in the entire game for years. It is incredibly overpowered, passing back resources to your base while farming insanely effectively with the Strider. In PvP, it might be even better because you can use it for a lot of fobbing as well, which is ridiculously strong. But it basically just makes you be able to transport stuff around the map incredibly easily. Out of all the basic Tek items that you make in a replicator, this is just by far the best Tek item in the game in my opinion. And if you want to count cryopods as a Tek item, which is totally fair if you want to do that, I'm putting it at number 0. Nothing else needs to be said, it's just the best. Transferring your creatures around the map in basically a Pokeball is very convenient. It completely changed Ark when it came out, and I'm actually working on a full video breaking down the cryopod's impact on the game because I think it's just kind of a really cool topic to talk about. I'm going to kind of dive into the history of it, all the balance changes it's received, including all the major nerfs that made the ranking of number 0 a little bit closer than it used to be, and just generally my thoughts on how it's impacted the game. So I'll sort of save my thoughts for that video. Anyway, that's my entire list for every single tech item ranked in Ark. Thank you to my members for helping support the channel. I have a members only video coming out in a couple of weeks here, so stay tuned for that. And if you want to learn how to get to the late game of Ark so much easier so you can get access to all these amazing tech items, I guarantee you'll enjoy the video linked on screen now with 13 simple tips that any player of any skill level can use to prevent 99% of the deaths they experience in game. Hope to see you there. Thanks for watching. Peace.